Shabbat Shalom, everyone. We're gathered together on this 11th of the 7th month, the day after Yom HaKippurim, and our second Sabbath of this month. So without further ado, we're going to hop right into what's called the Nazarene Acts of the Apostles, or the Recognitions of Clement. And this is what is known as it's better known as the teaching and preaching of Kepha. We get to learn about the second overseer of Rome, his personal conversion and history beforehand, and then his interactions with Kepha, and then his recording Kepha going out and preaching to the nations. But this is from Book 1, Chapter 1, Clement's Early History, Doubts. I, Clement, who was born in the city of Rome, was from my earliest age a lover of chastity, while the bent of my mind held me bound as with chains of anxiety and sorrow. For a thought that was in me, whence originating I cannot tell, constantly led me to think of my condition of mortality, and to discuss such questions as these: whether there be for me any life after death, or whether I am to be wholly annihilated, whether I did not exist before I was born, and whether there will be no remembrance of this life after death. And so boundlessness of time will consign all things to oblivion and silence, so that not only will we cease to be, but there will be no remembrance that we have ever been. This also I revolved in my mind, when the world was made, or what was before it was made, or whether it has existed from eternity. For it seemed certain that if it had been made, it must be doomed to dissolution. And if it be dissolved, what is to be afterwards? Unless it may be that all things will be buried in oblivion and silence, or something will be which the mind of man cannot now conceive. While I was continually revolving in my mind these and such like questions, suggested I know not how, I was pining away wonderfully through excess of grief. And what was worse, if at any time I thought to cast aside such cares as being of little use, the waves of anxiety rose all the higher upon me. For I had in me that most excellent companion who would not suffer me to rest, the desire of immortality. For as the subsequent issue showed, and the favor of Almighty Yahuah directed, this bent of mind led me to the quest of truth, and the acknowledgement of the true light. And hence it came to pass that ere long I pitied those whom formerly in my ignorance I believed to be blessed or Baruch. His dissatisfaction with the schools of the philosophers. Having therefore such a bent of mind from my earliest years, the desire of learning something led me to frequent the schools of the philosophers. There I saw that naught else was done, save that doctrines were asserted and controverted without end. Contests were waged, and the arts of syllogisms and the subtleties of conclusions were discussed. If at any time the doctrine of the immortality of the spirit or inner being prevailed, I was thankful. If at any time it was impunged, I went away sorrowful. Still, neither doctrine had the power of truth over my heart. This only I comprehended, that opinions and definitions of things were accounted true or false, not in accordance with their nature and the truth of the arguments, but in proportion to the talents of those who supported them. And I was all the more tortured in the bottom of my heart, because I was neither able to lay hold of any of those things that were spoken as firmly established, nor was I able to lay aside the desire of inquiry. But the more I endeavored to neglect and despise them, so much the more eagerly, as I have said, did a desire of this sort creeping in upon me secretly as with a kind of pleasure, take possession of my heart and mind. All right, chapter 4, his increasing disquiet. Being therefore distressed in the discovery of things, I said to myself, why do we labor in vain, since the end of things is manifest? For if after death I will be no more, my present torture is useless. But if there is to be for me a life after death, let us keep for that life the excitements that belong to it, lest it be that some sadder things befall me than those that I now suffer. Unless I will have lived obediently and soberly, and according to the opinions of some of the philosophers, I be consigned to the stream of dark rolling Phlegethon, or to Tartarus, like Siphius and Titus, to the ageless punishment in the infernal regions. And these are names from Greek mythology. I don't really know a lot about it, so I can't help you there. Like Exion and Tantalus. And again, I would answer to myself, but these things are fables, or if it be so, since the matter is in doubt, it is better to live obediently. But again, I would ponder with myself, how should I restrain myself from the lust of sin, while uncertain as to the reward of righteousness? And all the more when I have no certainty what righteousness is, or what is pleasing to Yahuah, and when I cannot ascertain whether the inner being is immortal, and be such that it has anything to hope for. Nor do I know what the future is certainly to be, yet still I cannot rest from thoughts of this sort. All right, his design to test the immortality of the inner being. It says spirit, and for some reason, this translation routinely puts spirit for where it should say the nephesh, and not where it's the ruach. There is a difference between them. But when it's the inner being of a man, that's the nephesh. So it says, what then will I do? This will I do. I will proceed to Mitzrayim, and there I will cultivate the friendship of the Hierophants, or Nevi'im, the foretellers, or prophets, who preside at the shrines. Then I will win over a magician by money and entreat him, by what they call the necromantic art, to bring me a spirit from the infernal regions, as if I were desirous of consulting it about some business. But this will be my consultation, whether the inner being is immortal. Now the proof that the inner being is immortal will be put past doubt, not from what it says or from what I hear, but from what I see. For seeing it with my eyes, I will ever after hold the surest conviction of its immortality. And no fallacy of words or uncertainty of hearing will ever be able to disturb the persuasion produced by sight. All right, someone had a question here saying, is there anything wrong with using the term spirit? Is it pagan origin? And that, just so you know, there's certain words that were used in the Nomnia Sacra, what's known in Latin as the sacred names. And to explain that real quick, after they were persecuting believers and Hebrew as a language was banned, they stopped writing his name in the Greek manuscripts. Before, they would just write in Paleo and put our Creator's name and for certain words and whatnot. But after the 3rd century, they would use a placeholder in Greek, 2 or 3 letters with a line over them. And eventually this was known as Nomnia Sacra, or the sacred names, because they did it consistently for the name of our Father, our Mashiach, the word for Ruach, as opposed to spirit, upright, man, and then a dozen other or so words, where they would not use the normal word for that language, in this case Greek most often, but they would use a placeholder instead. When he's talking about the Ruach of Yahuah, it was always the placeholder for the word Ruach, so you'd say that instead. When he was talking about any other spirit, they would use the common word for that language, and it was not really an issue. So I try to do the same thing for the most part. I don't mind using the word spirit unless we're talking about the Ruach of Yahuah, and then I use that word. The only issue here is that this isn't talking about the spirit being immortal. This is talking about the inner being of a man. The spirit is Ruach, which is also the breath, but the Nefesh is the inner being. And it's when he breathed into man the breath of life, that was the Nefesh, not necessarily the Ruach. The Ruach.
The soul, like when you the Nefesh, would that be also similar to the soul that's referred sometimes in?
Yes, that's exactly what it is. Sorry, I should have just said that. The Nefesh is the inner being or soul of a man. The Ruach is the spirit. There's two Ruachs that rule over every man, the Ruach from Yahuah or the Ruach from Satan, right? Demonic spirits or from our Creator. But in every man, the animating force is his soul, or the inner being, the Nefesh, the breath that was given to you. So thank you for that. And it's the Nefesh that's immortal that is in a man after you die. It's the Nefesh, or the soul, the inner being, that is presented to the Father. And then that is where it's the inner being, or the Nefesh, that is taken to the abode where you're going to be inhabiting until the consummation, whether the bosom of Abraham, where the righteous dwell, or right next to the lake of fire, right?
Hey, Richard, brother, I got a question. And what is your understanding of the standing man doctrine? I mean, it seems to be, because we heard a little bit about that in the beginning, and what the standing man is. He says there'll always be a standing man before me. And I was explaining that to Cindy the other night, actually last night, and how it's almost as the standing man gets passed down from Yaakov or James the Just or Yaakov Hazadik, on to Kepha, and then on to Clement. So do you believe that the standing man doctrine is there's always one standing?
Can I type it out right there?
I'm sorry, what was that?
So this standing man thing, what is that?
That's what he was asking my opinion on it. It's
Right.
something that, go ahead.
Well, yeah, he's asking your opinion, but what is it?
It's a doctrine. Oh, go ahead, John.
In the preface, we got to hear a little bit of Jackson talking about the standing doctrine, and how no matter what framework, where we're at in history, or in the time of anything, that he'll always have a standing man, one that speaks, for the Father, that leads the assemblies.
Right. Now, to answer your question, I would have to we'll have to dig into that, read it as we get here to see what the opinion of Simon the Magician is, which is quite different from what is said elsewhere. But when you were asking me that question, the only thing that comes to mind is like the Rechabites and the promises of Dawid and others, where because the Rechabites were obedient to their father and did his will, they would always have a man standing before our Maker. Yeah, when Dawid, because he was obedient to Yahuah, he would always have his son sitting on the throne of Israel. He would always have someone before him. Because Abraham was obedient, he would become the father of a multitude of nations. So he would have descendants that were innumerable because of his obedience. That kind of thing is where I get that concept in Scripture. On the reverse of that, and Simon the Magician says he's the standing man, as meaning that he's so compacted with divinity, is what he says, that he can't die. His body won't age or become corrupt. And that concept is also in Scripture, in the Dead Sea Scrolls and elsewhere, where he's known as the ageless Mashiach, the one who's the living one who cannot die. which is also in the common scriptures where they ask him, but we heard that the Mashiach remains forever. Who is this son of Adam, right? So that's the concepts that come to mind. I would have to look to find out something else to see if there was anything to it, but I don't know at this point.
Sorry to go down.
Is Yeshua our standing man now?
I'm sorry?
Is Yeshua the standing man now?
Well, he passed it on down to his brother.
Yeah, that's the part where I'd have to look at it because I don't recall. I couldn't tell you.
Yeah, because we kind of, I think we pick up on it here a bit that, why James the Just or Yaakov, because his name's not James. King James just want to put his name in the Bible. Yaakov ben Hazadik, son of Zadok, being Yahushua's brother, that's like the lineage, the one who runs the sect of Jerusalem, and as it was passed on down, that there will always be a standing man before the Father, whether it be David, whether it be on down the line. But sorry, just not to get off on a rabbit trail, just something that caught my attention that I've been hearing a lot of.
It certainly could be in the similar context to what I just mentioned too, just in a fuller form after he came, right? But like I said, I don't have that off the top of my head, and we'd have to look as we go. All right, so we'll go ahead and continue reading, but feel free to interject with comments as you can, and thank you for that. Calling me out on my things I don't remember. This is, however, I related this project to a certain philosopher with whom I was intimate, who counseled me not to venture upon it. For, said he, if the inner being or soul should not obey the call of the magician, you henceforth will live more hopelessly, as thinking that there is nothing after death, and also as having tried things unlawful. If, however, you seem to see anything, what obedience or what piety can arise to you from things unlawful and illicit? For they say that transactions of this sort are hateful to the Almighty, and that Elohim sets himself in opposition to those who trouble spirits, or it's really demons, right? Trouble spirits after their release from the body. When I heard this, I was indeed staggered in my purpose, yet I could not in any way either lay aside my longing or cast off the distressing thought. And in Ecclesiasticus or Sirach ben Yahushua, you find a lot of information about getting counsel, talking to those that are knowledgeable, and it's in the common scriptures throughout the Proverbs as well. But taking prudent counsel and thinking things through, talking to others about them that have your best interests at heart, that's what we're supposed to do. And you can see, even when he was not a believer, he was given good counsel and he took that advice. So it saved him from a lot of problems. Later on in the book, we'll read that it is demons that they consort with, which is prohibited in the common scriptures to us all.
And someday I hope we just go read through Sirach too.
Right? That is a great book as well.
Oh man, it's the one that if I could do it, put it on my deal to just listen to it, that would really remind you a lot. Because that is definitely a book of Chokhmah and finding wisdom.
The chapter 6, he hears of Mashiach. Not to make a long story of it, while I was tossed upon these bellows of my thought, a certain report which took its rise from the regions of the east in the reign of Tiberius Caesar gradually reached us, and gaining strength as it passed through every place, like some good message sent from Yahuah, it was filling the whole world and suffered not the el-breathed will to be concealed in silence. For it was spread over all places, announcing that there was a certain person in Yahudah who, beginning in the springtime, was preaching the Malkuth, or kingdom, the reign of Yahuah, to the Yahudim, saying that those should receive it who should observe the ordinances of his commandments and his doctrine, and that his speech might be believed to be worthy of credit and full of the Almighty. He was said to perform many mighty works and wonderful signs and prodigies by his mere word, so that as one having power from Yahuah, he made the deaf to hear, the blind to see, and the lame to stand erect, and expelled every infirmity and all demons from men. Yea, that he even raised dead persons who were brought to him, that he cured lepers also, looking at them from a distance, and that there was absolutely nothing that seemed impossible to him. These and such like things were confirmed in process of time, not now by frequent rumors, but by the plain statements of persons coming from those quarters, and day by day the truth of the matter was further disclosed. At length, meetings began to be held in various places in the city, and this subject to be discussed in conversation, and to be a matter of wonder who this might be who appeared, or who had appeared, and what message he had brought from Yahuah to men. Until about the same year, a certain man standing in a most crowded place in the city made proclamation to the people, saying, "Hear me, you citizens of Rome. The Son of Yahuah is now in the regions of Yahudah, promising ageless life to everyone who will hear him, but upon condition that he will regulate his actions according to the will of him by whom he has been sent, even of Yahuah the Father. So turn from evil things to good, from things temporal to things ageless. Acknowledge that there is one El, ruler of Shamayim and earth, in whose righteous sight the unrighteous inhabit his world. But if you be converted and act according to his will, then coming to the world to come and being made immortal, you will enjoy his unspeakable birakoth, or blessings and rewards." Now, just for context, after our Mashiach was doing his preaching, he anointed the 12, and the 12 went out. And then after the 12, he sent out the 72. That could have been this time when Barnabas was out preaching in Rome. This is now the man who spoke these things to the people was from the regions of the east, by tribe a Hebrew, by name Yahuseph Barnabas, who said that he himself was one of his Talmudim, or taught ones, and that he was sent for this end, that he should declare these things to whom would hear them. When I heard these things, I began with the rest of the multitude to follow him and to hear what he had to say. Truly, I perceived that there was nothing of dialectic artifice in the man, but that he expounded with simplicity and without any craft of speech, such things as he heard from the Son of Yahuah, or had seen. For he did not confirm assertions by the force of arguments, but produced from the people who stood round about him many witnesses of the sayings and marvels that he related. Now, inasmuch as the people began to assent willingly to the things that were sincerely spoken, and to embrace his simple discourse, those who thought themselves learned or philosophic began to laugh at the man, and to flout him, and to throw out for him the grappling hooks of Sigoliisms, like strong arms.
Hey, Richard, I have a quick question. I'm sorry to interrupt before you go.
No problem.
Sigoliisms. I've never heard of that term before. What does that mean?
All right, so Sigoliisms and the other one, I can't remember what it's called, but it has to do with tricky wordplay. We'll see it in just a moment as we read longer, but it's trying to be clever in your words to get one over where you have definitions and meanings of things that not everyone is familiar with, or you try to use fallacious arguments to win when it's not actually simple or honest. I'm going to look it up for you right now just so it's not. All right, Sigoliism. An instance of a form of reasoning in which a conclusion is drawn, whether valid or not, from two given or assumed propositions or premises, each of which shares a term with the conclusion and shares a common or middle term not present in the conclusion. For example, all dogs are animals, all animals have 4 legs. Therefore, all dogs have 4 legs.
So it's like a soliloquy is what we're doing. That's where it comes from.
Yeah.
Circular reasoning. Yeah. That's like witchcraft.
A syllogism is just a multiple of a soliloquy, which we hear all the time when it comes to even our TV shows.
The news.
Yeah.
And you'll see examples of it, what he means as we read right here too, because they try to throw it out at him. So it says grappling hooks of Sigoliisms like strong arms, but he unterrified regarding their subtleties as mere ravings, did not even judge them worthy of an answer, but boldly pursued the subject that he had set before him. At length, someone having proposed this question to him as he was speaking, why a gnat has been so formed, that though it is a small creature and has 6 feet, yet it has got wings in addition, whereas an elephant, though it is an immense animal and has no wings, yet has only 4 feet. He, paying no attention to the question, went on with his discourse, which had been interrupted by the unseasonable challenge, only adding this admonition at every interruption. We have it in charge to declare to you the words and the wondrous works of him who has sent us, and to confirm the truth of what we speak, not by artfully devised arguments, but by witnesses produced from amongst yourselves. For I recognize many standing in the midst of you, whom I remember to have heard along with us the things that we have heard, and too have seen what we have seen. But be it in your option to receive or to spurn the tidings that we bring to you. For we cannot keep back what we know to be for your advantage, because if we be silent, woe is to us. But to you, if you receive not what we speak, destruction. I could indeed very easily answer your foolish challenges, if you asked for the sake of learning truth. I mean, as to the difference of a gnat and an elephant. But now it were absurd to speak to you of these creatures, when the very creator and framer of all things is unknown by you. That's the same thing we hear. You don't throw the pearls before swine or dogs. You don't give the secrets of the rain or the inner workings of how things are to someone who's reprobate and overtly sinning, right? We have to correct the things that are known to be wrongs before you move on to the finer things in belief. This is when he had thus spoken, all, as with one consent, with rude voice raised a shout in derision, or to put him to shame, and to silence him, crying out that he was a barbarian and a madman. When I saw matters going on in this way, being filled I know not whence, with a certain zeal, and inflamed with fervent enthusiasm, I could not keep silence, but cried out with all boldness, most righteously does Almighty Yahuah hide his will from you, whom he foresaw to be unworthy of the knowledge of himself, as is manifest to those who are really wise, from what you are now doing. For when you see that preachers of the will of Yahuah have come amongst you, because their speech makes no show of knowledge of the grammatical art, but in simple and unpolished language they set before you the el-breathed commands, so that all who hear may be able to follow and to comprehend the things that are spoken. You deride the ministers and messengers of your deliverance, not knowing that it is the condemnation of you who think yourselves skillful and eloquent, that rustic and barbarous men have knowledge of the truth, whereas when it has come to you, it is not even received as a guest, while, if your intemperance and lust did not oppose, it ought to have been a citizen and a native. Thus you are convicted of not being friends or haverim. Haverim is the Hebrew for friends of truth, and philosophers. What philosophers means lovers of wisdom, right? So thus you are convicted of not being friends of truth and lovers of wisdom, but followers of boasting and vain speakers. You think that truth dwells not in simple, but in ingenious and subtle words, and produce countless thousands of words that are not to be rated at the worth of one word. What then do you think will become of you, all you crowd of Greeks, if there is to be, as he says, a judgment by Yahuah? But now give over laughing at this man to your own destruction, and let any one of you who pleases answer me. For indeed, by your barking, you annoy the ears even of those who desire to be delivered. And by your clamor, you turn aside to the fall of infidelity the minds that are prepared for belief. What pardon can there be for you who deride and do violence to the messenger of the truth when he offers to you the knowledge of Yahuah? Whereas, even if he brought you nothing of truth, yet even for the kindness of his intentions towards you, you ought to receive him with gratitude and welcome. And that's something that's also enjoined in the apostolic constitutions. If there's a teacher, as someone who's a traveler that's preaching the word or whatever, and he comes to you, you're supposed to accept them into your house and you receive them. But if they're preaching errant doctrines, you provide for their subsistence, you're friendly with them, but you don't agree with their teaching. You don't receive the error, but you're still kind to them. You try to help correct it. So while I was urging these and similar arguments, a great excitement was stirred up amongst the bystanders, some being moved with pity towards us or towards a stranger and approving my speech as in accordance with that feeling. Others, petulant and stolid, rousing the anger of their undisciplined minds as much against me as against Yahushua Barnabas. But as the day was declining to evening, I laid hold of Yahushua Barnabas by the right hand and led him away, although reluctantly, to my house. And there I made him remain, lest perchance any one of the rude rabble should lay hands upon him. While we were thus placed in contact for a few days, I gladly heard him discoursing the word of truth. Yet he hastened his departure, saying that he must by all means celebrate at Yahudah a feast of Yahuah that was approaching, and that there should remain, or that there he should remain in future with his countrymen and his brothers, evidently indicating that he was horrified at the wrong that had been done to him. It says, at length I said to him, only expound to me the doctrine that man, or of that man who you say has appeared, and I will arrange your sayings in my language, and will preach the Malkuth, or the kingdom and righteousness of Almighty Yahuah. So you see, just like David says in the Psalms, instruct him so that he could teach others the way and convert sinners unto him. Clement had that same disposition. After he heard the truth, he wanted to get it fully in his mind so that he could share it with others. That was the whole point. It's also a theme that you see over and over again in the revival memoir of Charles Finney that I've been mentioning, right? These people, they get converted and then they want to share and help others have the same. This is, and after that, if you desire it, I will even sell along with you, for I am extremely desirous to see Yahudah, and it could be that I will remain with you always. To this he answered, if indeed you desire to see our country and to learn those things that you desire, set sail with me even now, or if there be anything that detains you now, I will leave with you directions to my dwelling, so that when you please to come, you may easily find me. For tomorrow I will set out on my journey. When I saw him determined, I went down with him to the harbor and carefully took from him the directions that he gave me to find his dwelling. I told him that but for the necessity of getting some money that was due to me, I should not at all delay, but that I should speedily follow him. Having told him this, I commended him to the kindness of those who had charge of the ship, and returned sad, for I was possessed of the memory of the discourse that I had had with an excellent guest and a choice friend. All right, so this is chapter 12, Clement's arrival at Caesarea and introduction to Kepha. It says, having then stopped for a few days, and having in some measure finished the business of collecting what was owing to me, for I neglected many things through my desire of hastening, that I might not be hindered from my purpose, I set sail directly for Yahudah, and after 15 days landed at Caesarea Stratonos, which is the largest city in Israel. And it was also built by Herod the Great, if you're familiar with that. When I had landed and was seeking for an inn, I learned from the conversation of the people that one Kepha, a most approved taught one of him who appeared in Yahudah, and showed many signs and miracles mightily performed among men, was going to hold a discussion of words and questions the next day with one Shimon, or Simon, a Samaritan, or Shemaroni. Having heard this, I asked to be shown his lodging, and having found it, and standing before the door, I informed the doorkeeper who I was, and whence I came. And behold, Yahushua Barnabas coming out. As soon as he saw me, rushed into my arms, weeping for joy, and seizing me by the hand, led me in to Kepha, having pointed him out to me at a distance. This, said he, is Kepha, of whom I spoke to you, as the greatest in the Chokhmah of Yahuah, and to whom also I have spoken constantly of you. Enter therefore as one well known to him, for he is well acquainted with all the good that is in you, and has carefully made himself aware of your obedient purpose, whence also he is greatly desirous to see you. Therefore I present you to him today as a great gift. At the same time presenting me, he said, this, O Kepha, is Clement. But Kepha, most kindly, when he heard my name, immediately ran to me and kissed me. Then, having made me sit down, he said, you did well to receive as your guest Yahushua Barnabas, preacher of the truth, not fearing the rage of the insane people. You will be Baruch, or blessed, for as you have deemed an ambassador of the truth worthy of all honor, so the truth herself will receive you, a wanderer and a stranger, and will enroll you a citizen of her own city. And then there will be great joy to you, because in parting a small favor, you will be written heir of ageless birakoth, or blessings. Now therefore, do not trouble yourself to explain your mind to me, for Yahushua Barnabas has with trustworthy speech informed me of all things about you and your dispositions, almost daily and without ceasing, recalling the memory of your good qualities, and to point out to you shortly, as to a friend already of one mind with us, what is your best course. If there is nothing to hinder you, come along with us and hear the word of the truth, which we are going to speak in every place until we come even to the city of Rome. And now, if you desire anything, speak. Having detailed to him what purpose I had conceived from the beginning, and how I had been distracted with vain inquiries, and all those things that at first I intimated or hinted to you, my master Jacob, so that I need not repeat the same things now. I willingly agreed to travel with him. For that, said I, is just what I was most eagerly desirous of. But first I should desire the scheme of truth to be expounded to me, that I may know whether the inner being or soul is it mortal or immortal, and if immortal, whether it will be brought into judgment for those things that it does here. Further, I desire to know what that righteousness is which is pleasing to Yahuah. Then further, whether the world was created, and why it was created, and whether it is to be dissolved, and whether it is to be renovated and made better, or whether after this there will be no world at all. And not to mention everything, I should desire to be told what is the case with respect to these and such like things. To this Kepha answered, I will briefly impart to you the knowledge of these things, O Clement, therefore listen. In Kepha's first instruction, causes of ignorance. The will and counsel of Yahuah has for many reasons been concealed from men. First, indeed, through bad instruction, immoral associations, evil habits, unprofitable conversation, and unrighteous presumptions. On account of all these, I say, first error, then contempt, then infidelity and malice, covetousness also, and vain boasting, and other such like evils have filled the whole house of this world, like some enormous smoke, and preventing those who dwell in it from seeing its founder aright, and from perceiving what things are pleasing to him. What then is fitting for those who are within, accepting with a cry brought forth from their innermost hearts to invoke his aid, who alone is not shut up in the smoke-filled house, that he would approach and open the door of the house, so that the smoke may be dissipated that is within, and the light of the sun that shines without may be admitted. He, therefore, whose aid is needed for the house filled with the darkness of ignorance and the smoke of vices, is he, we say, who is called the Navia Emet, or the foreteller of truth, also the true foreteller, who alone can enlighten the inner beings of men, so that with their eyes they may plainly see the way of safety. For otherwise it is impossible to get knowledge of el-breathed and ageless things, unless one learns of that true foreteller. Because, as you yourself stated a little while ago, the belief of things and the opinions of causes are estimated in proportion to the talents of their advocates. Hence also, one and the same cause is now thought righteous, now unrighteous, or just and now unjust. And what now seemed true, anon becomes false on the assertion of another. Anon means after a short time, or after a time, right? For this reason, the credit of obedience and piety demanded the presence of the true foreteller, that he himself might tell us respecting each particular, how the truth stands, and might teach us how we are to believe concerning each. And therefore, before all else, the credentials of the true foreteller, the credentials of the foreteller himself must be examined with all care. And when you have once ascertained that he is a foreteller, it behooves you thenceforth to believe him in everything, and not further to discuss the particulars that he teaches, but to hold the things that he speaks as certain and set apart, which
So-
things all...
So, brother,
Yes.
as I project here, hearing those words, it would behoove us, to attach ourselves to a foreteller. But there's such a fine line of what is truth and what is not. So I'm just saying it's just awesome to hear these words and him give us a directive and a map on whom to consult with. And Shalom.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, later on, he goes into more detail about this particular thing, confirming the words of the true foreteller. And to establish that one is a true foreteller, he gives a list of what you're supposed to look for. One of the last things on the list is that someone hasn't taken the truth and mixed it with some lies and presented that as their own teaching, which is a direct refutation of most of the errant stuff that's come after their times, where people will take things from scripture and then come up with their own opinions and just go with it. Also with what the Nicolaitans brought in that you can find in the Anti-Mashiach for Dummies videos, right? That very thing that was instituted that we can see prevalent throughout a lot of the scriptures wherever there's error is what we have to be mindful of. But to establish the words, once they're there and once you know that they're true, you're to believe them without question. So that it's definitely an amazing thing that we really have to look for. And the order that's given, which I try to share every time that we get an opportunity, the original covenant is the truth. Moshe was given, and he said that there would be one like him that comes amongst their brothers that we need to listen to. That one is our Mashiach, that when he came, he established the truth, and he set up the 12, and he said that anyone who won't listen to you, dust off your feet. It will be better for Sodom and Gomorrah in the day of judgment, for the 12 and then the 72, right?
Isn't that correct? Deuteronomy 18.
Yes, I believe that's it.
Yeah, the foretelling of Moshe.
Mm-hmm. And so then you have it went from Moshe to our Mashiach, and then we have to listen to him, and then he sent the 12 and then the 70, and then we're supposed to listen to them. And the 12 are the ones that set up the emissaries or set up the overseers. And we'll see, or we've already checked it before, but in the apostolic constitutions, there's a list of who they anointed and set up and built, where they built the assemblies at, where they enjoin the believers to listen to the overseers they put in place, because they're the ones that are carrying down the truth that was given. So there's an order of priority. The original covenant, what our Mashiach said first, his taught ones, and the original covenant, and what comes after, and they all should be in agreement.
So that would go to the original standing man.
Right. It's always going back to before.
Right.
In the back of Jackson Snyder's book, where it has the doctrine of reserve, where Kepha wrote a letter to Yaakov about his preaching, and it shouldn't be just given to anybody, he specifically mentions that the way they had it established with Moshe is the same thing they should do here, where Moshe was given the truth from our Maker, and then he gave it to the elders, those that were endowed with intelligence, or the ones that were chosen to be the leaders of the people. And then they were helping him to give the truth and to administer judgment to the people in general. So it's that same pattern. Just like our Mashiach came and he established his taught ones and sent them out, and then the taught ones, they do the same pattern. And that would be the idea of the standing man in that capacity anyways, because they're the ones carrying down the truth and standing in the gap for the believers, just like the watchmen were meant to do beforehand, right?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you for that. All right, so right here it says, which things, although they seem to be received by belief, yet are believed on the ground of the probation previously instituted by the fact that he's a foreteller, right? For when once at the outset the truth of the foreteller is established on examination, the rest is to be heard and held on the ground of the belief by which it is already established that he is a teacher of truth. And as it is certain that all things that pertain to Elohim's knowledge ought to be held according to the rule of truth, so it is beyond doubt that from none but himself alone can it be known what is true. Having thus spoken, he set forth to me so openly and so clearly who that foreteller was and how he might be found, that I seemed to have before my eyes and to handle with my hand the proofs that he produced concerning the foretold truth.
Beloved, it's not scrolling.
All right, just a moment. All right, so as I was saying here, it says, having thus spoken, he set forth to me so openly and so clearly who that foreteller was and how he might be found, that I seemed to have before my eyes and to handle with my hand the proofs that he produced concerning the foretold truth. And I was struck with intense astonishment, how no one sees, though placed before his eyes, those things that all are seeking for. Whence by his command, reducing into order what he had spoken to me, I compiled a scroll concerning the true foreteller, and sent it to you, Master Jacob, from Caesarea by his command. For he said that he had received a command from you to send you every year an account of his sayings and doings. Meantime, Azari right here, if you're not familiar with the words in Hebrew, Azar is a helpmate, to be his helper, right? The Eben Hazar, or the Ebenezer from scripture, is the stone of help. And the wife, the woman, was to be the Azar of a man, the helpmeet. That's that same word, just so you know. This is, I compiled a scroll concerning the true foreteller and sent it to you, Master Jacob, from Caesarea by his command. For he said that he had received a command from you to send you every year an account of his sayings and doings. Meantime, at the beginning of his discourse that he delivered to me the first day, when he had instructed me very fully concerning the foreteller of truth, and very many things besides, he added also this. See, said he, for the future, and be present at the discussions, that whenever any necessity arises, I will hold with those who contradict, against whom, when I dispute, even if I will seem to be worsted, I will not be afraid of your being led to doubt of those things that I have stated to you. Because even if I will seem to be beaten, yet those things will not therefore seem to be uncertain that the foreteller of truth has delivered to us. Okay. Yet I hope or expect that we will not be overcome in disputations either. Or if only our hearers are reasonable and friends of truth, who can discern the force and bearing of words, and recognize what discourse comes from the rhetorical art, not containing truth, but an image of truth, and what that is which, uttered simply and without craft, depends for all its power, not on show and ornament, but on truth and reason. To this I answered, I give thanks to El Shaddai, which means El Almighty, right? Because I have been instructed as I desire, as I wished and desired. At all events, you may depend upon me so far that I can never come to doubt of those things that I have learned of you, so that even if you yourself should at any time wish to transfer my belief from the true foreteller, you should not be able, because I have drunk in with my whole heart, or with all my heart, what you have spoken. And that you may not think that I am promising you a great thing when I say that I cannot be moved away from this belief. It is with me a certainty that whoever has received this account of the true foreteller can never afterwards so much as doubt of its truth. And therefore, I am confident with respect to this Shamayim taught doctrine, in which all the art of malice is crushed. For in opposition to this foretelling, neither any art can stand, nor the subtleties of sophisms and sogoliism. That was the other word I was looking for there, sophisms, right? Which is like trying to use clever words and tricky wordplay to confuse people.
Sophisms, soliloquyisms.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but for the truth itself, or sorry, I messed that up. Let me back up right here. It says, for in opposition to this foretelling, neither can any art stand, or neither can any art can stand, nor the subtleties of sophisms and sogolism. But everyone who hears the foreteller of truth must of necessity long immediately for the truth itself, nor will he afterwards, under pretext of seeking the truth, endure diverse errors. So, my master Kepha, be not further anxious about me, as if I were one who does not know what he has received, and how great a gift has been conferred on him. Be assured that you have conferred a favor on one who knows and comprehends its value. Nor can I be easily deceived on that account, because I seem to have gotten quickly what I long desired. For it may be that one who desires gets quickly, while another does not even slowly obtain the things that he desires.
Yep, time out before you go. Exactly. How I was in agreement. I was just saying, what a true statement that is. What we just read.
Absolutely.
For what desired. Actually, can you scroll down on the screen again? Yes.
The other way, or?
Yeah. Can you reread from Emet?
Okay.
The Navi Emet?
Right. So it says, be assured that you have conferred a favor on one who knows and comprehends its value. Nor can I be easily deceived on that account, because I seem to have gotten quickly what I long desired. For it may be that one who desires gets quickly, while another does not even slowly obtain the things that he desires.
Exactly. And that answers a lot of prayer questions for people.
Mm-hmm. There's more detail given on that too, both for prayers and for our Mashiach making himself known to people. Kepha goes into detail that he's within the minds of every man. And when we, as the men, have humbly prepared ourselves for the truth, he, being a foreteller, knows these things and makes himself known to us.
Hey, can I, so I'm trying to understand what John and you and Richard are, I see a nugget in that paragraph there, a couple of nuggets. For example, would you say that if I'm sharing the Basora, the message to somebody, if they get it quickly, it's not that it's okay or not okay, but if they get it quickly or slowly, is that what that's trying to portray there?
Yes.
Yes, but if they do, I mean, that's more of like a personal level to us. You know, sorry, I'm choking a drink of water. But for us, you know, who gains understanding quickly, that's one who's really led. It's pretty much that's what that's saying.
Personally, or if I'm sharing the message with somebody else, because I've been sharing this what I know up to this point with a bunch of different people, and I'm really getting to notice that some people, like, it's rare, but when it's like definitely a barak if somebody just picks up on it immediately of what I'm saying and takes it.
You can feel it. You can feel it. It's like you want to continue to tell them about more because they're hungry. And then you got those that might be closest to you and they just shut you out.
Yeah. And everything in between.
Yeah.
Isn't that having ears to hear?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Which our Mashiach said, Yahushua said that no one can come to me unless the Father himself draw him, and he will raise him up in the last day. And everyone who's heard and learned comes to him, as it is written, they shall all be taught by Yahuah. So,
So we are in that category, and then we have the category of depart from me, I never knew you. Even though you have claimed that you've cast out demons in his name and you've done all these great things that you thought were great.
Bingo.
Bingo.
Yeah.
You know, every time I played that game, I never got a bingo.
I came from a Christian background. I was part of a lot of one or two really strong ministries, and a lot of the leadership that think that they're doing these wonderful works, and it saddens me to I just want to go grab them and tell them that's not what he wants.
No shaking babies.
No, I came from apostolic, Pentecostal. Yeah, from Louisiana, Oklahoma, Texas, to finding this. But I was born and raised in Louisiana, so Catholicism got thrown my way. So I know what you're talking about, brother.
Yeah, it's sad, but I'm just gonna keep praying.
Another section you guys want to check out is 2 Corinthians 2:15 and on. I'll read it to you real quick, or not 15, 13. Well, I'll start at 14. It says, but thanks be to Elohim, who always leads us on to overcome in Mashiach and manifests through us the fragrance of his knowledge in every place. Because we are to Elohim the fragrance of Mashiach among those who are being delivered and among those who are perishing. To the one, we are the smell of death to death, and to the other, the fragrance of life to life. And who is competent for these? Meaning, who's responsible for having people feel that way about it? That would be our Creator, right?
Brother, you hit it right on the head.
What was that again?
This is 2 Corinthians chapter 2, verses 14 and then through 17. The last verse is right here. It says, for we are not, as so many, adulterating the word of Elohim, but as of sincerity, but as from Elohim, in the sight of Elohim, we speak in Mashiach. And that's either received by others or rejected, how they regard the truth. So it's his calling and doing, but we're either a stench or a well-pleasing aroma, right?
Yep.
And we're hear the stench in Yahuah's nostrils on those who eat swine's flesh. That's the last for the stench. Right.
That's Yeshayahu 65 and 66 talking about that. There's a few things that we can do to be a foul stench in his nostrils. That's absolutely true. But the righteous, their offerings and prayers are a well-pleasing aroma.
Perfect.
All right. So we'll hop back on here. This is chapter 19, Kepha's satisfaction. Then Kepha, when he heard me speak thus, said, I give thanks to my Yahuah both for your deliverance and for my own Shalom. For I am greatly delighted to see that you have comprehended what is the greatness of the foretold virtue. And because, as you say, not even I myself should I desire it, which Yahuah forbid, should be able to turn you away to another belief. Now henceforth begin to be with us, and tomorrow be present at our discussions, for I am to have a contest with Shimon the magician. When he had thus spoken, he retired to take food along with his friends, or Havarim. They say Havarim here, but it's really a chet, so it should be like a guttural Havarim. But it got dropped when it softens as you change it to English for whatever reason. People aren't used to making that kind of noise, so they just don't do the CH part of it. But along with his Havarim or friends, but he ordered me to eat by myself. And after the meal, when he had sung praise to Yahuah and given thanks, he rendered to me an account of this proceeding and added, "May Yahuah grant to you to be made like to us in all things, that receiving mikvah or immersion, you may be able to meet with us at the same table." Having thus spoken, he ordered me to go to rest, for by this time both fatigue and the time of day called to sleep. Now, it'll be explained later why he can't eat with them, but a long story short, anyone that's associated with idols or eaten anything offered to idols has demons in them. Anyone who's willingly done wickedness has demons in them, and to partake of the same table would allow that demon to infect others. This is something that Kepha explains in full detail as we go along.
Are you saying if somebody willingly knows what they're doing is wrong, it's they're being influenced by demons?
Oh, well, someone might be doing wrong. They might read the words on the page, or they might know the truth and still not be able to perceive it. And that muddling up their comprehension is a direct effect of demonic influence, either Satan or demons specifically. It's his influence.
That's yes, exactly.
Our creator is light. He's not darkness or confusion. He is elucidation, information, knowledge, wisdom, right? The intelligence. The opposite of those things is satanic, including not being able to think clearly or comprehend what's right before your eyes, which is, again, this is stuff that he goes over in detail through these writings and teachings. But we'll get to that when it comes. I just want to let you know why and not have it trip anyone up.
But what a beautiful thing that you just said, because you gave it so eloquently.
Thank you. It's all right. So chapter 20, the postponement of the discussion with Simon the magician. We'll read this one and probably have to wrap it up, and then we'll start his discourse the next time. It works out rather well. It says, early next morning, Zakkai, and that's the little tax collector that climbed into a tree when our Mashiach was going towards his passion to Yerushalayim. He was the one coming from Jericho, that he said, "Come down here. I have to eat with you." Right? And he calls him a son of Abraham. If you remember the context, for the children of Abraham are the ones that do his works, as opposed to the works of the adversary. He says, early next morning, Zakkai came in to us after salutation, said to Kepha, "Shimon puts off the discussion till the 11th day of the present month, which is 7 days hence. For he says that then he will have more leisure for the contest. But to me it seems that his putting off is also advantageous to us, so that more may come together, who may be either hearers or judges of our disputation. However, if it seem proper to you, let us occupy the interval in discussing among ourselves the things which we suppose may come into the controversy, so that each of us, knowing what things are to be proposed and what answers are to be given, may consider with himself if they are all right, or if an adversary will be able to find anything to object, or to set aside the things that we bring against him. But if the things that are spoken or are to be spoken by us are manifestly impregnable on every side, we will have confidence in entering upon the examination. And indeed, that is my opinion, that first of all it ought to be inquired what is the origin of all things, or what is the immediate thing that may be called the cause of all things that are. Then, so this is telling you how you can start from the beginning and work your way towards a sound belief, right?
Seems like the most perfect way of trying to figure out how to go.
Absolutely. And they always explain it. This is what Kepha is very, very beneficial in reading, because he goes through and he goes to the beginning of a point and he goes through each part of it to give you the whole sense, so that when he's done explaining, the truth is readily available. It's not, it just makes sense. It's not something that you have to be like, okay, well, I'll just believe you. He uses truth and reason, right? But it says, with respect to all things that exist. Let me back up. All right. It says that first of all, it ought to be inquired what is the origin of all things, or what is the immediate thing that may be called the cause of all things that are. Then, with respect to all things that exist, whether they have been made, and by whom, through whom, and for whom, whether they have received their substance from one, or from two, or from many, and whether they have been taken and fashioned from none previously subsisting, or from some, then whether there is any virtue in the highest things or in the lower, whether there is anything that is better than all, or anything that is inferior to all, whether there are any motions or none, whether those things that are seen were always and will be always, whether they have come into existence without a creator and will pass away without a destroyer. If I say the discussion begin with these things, I think that the things that will be inquired into, being discussed with diligent examination, will be easily ascertained. And when these are ascertained, the knowledge of those that follow will be easily found. I have stated my opinion. Be pleased to hint or intimate what you think of the matter. All right. Let me see what we got real quick.
Sounds like a good pausing spot, because
Yeah, I think that's a good one. Then we can pick up next time, because that's where Kepha gets into his main teaching. So with that, I think we'll stop here. Everyone have a wonderful Shabbat, and we will see you next time.